The following video shows the construction of a two-way table, and as such involves a lot of numerical calculations. For this reason, we suggest you be prepared to stop and pause at various parts so you can check these calculations along the way. In this question, we're being asked to analyse a lot of information about students at a school, which year group they're in and the various modes of transport they use, and we're being asked to put it into a table, to be precise a two-way table, so we can display this information more clearly. It's recommended that you pause here, read all the information before we proceed into the rest of the question. Before we set up our two-way table, we need to determine what are the two key pieces of information, or two key categories. In this case, we've got the year group that the student's in, and the mode of transport they're using to get to school. So that's going to determine the top of our table and the left-hand side. So we're putting year groups across the top, and we're putting transport modes on the left-hand side. And what we'll do inside the table is put the number of students that match a particular year group and a mode of transport to get to school. The first bit of information we'll put into this table will be that there's 120 students being surveyed, and that's the total of all the numbers being displayed inside this table. So that goes in the bottom right-hand corner. The next bit of information that we have is that 3/8 of all the students are in Year 8. So we need to work out 3/8 of 120, and that comes to 45. And we place that in the bottom of the table so that all the numbers in the Year 8 column add up to 45. We also know that 1/3 of the students are in Year 7, and likewise that 40 goes in the bottom of the Year 7 column where it has total. So we know that the total number of Year 7s being surveyed is 40. Prior to looking at the next bit of information, we can see that Year 7s and Year 8s together add to 85. That means that if we subtract that number from 120, we know the number of Year 9s, and we can put that at the bottom of the Year 9 column, and that comes to 35. Now we can look at some numbers in the right-hand column, which represents the total for the different modes of transport. Now we know that 1/5 of all students caught the bus. Now 1/5 of 120 comes to 24, so we can put that at the end of the first row. We also know that 1/4 of all students walked, so 1/4 of 120 is 30, and that number can go at the end of the second row. We can now see that 24 students caught the bus, 30 walked, and that comes to a total of 54. And if we subtract that from 120, we know the number of students who took a car trip in the morning, and that number is 66. So this initial information has been enough to get the table started, but we need to carry on with more information to complete the inside of the table. So first of all, what we're told is that 16 Year 8s catch the bus. So if we go down the Year 8 column, we'll notice the very first entry in that column is number of students who caught the bus, so we can place a 16 there. The next bit of information is that 15 Year 7s do not come in a car. So that means that if they don't come in a car, they must have gone in a bus or walked to school. That doesn't help us because there's two entries we need to provide there. But what we do know is there's 40 students in total in Year 7. So if we subtract 15 from 40, what we'll end up with is 25. So that means 25 students did come in a car. And we can place that entry at the end of the first column. We also know that 14 Year 9s walked to school. So if we go to the last column where Year 9s are, we can place a 14 next to the walk. The last bit of information we have is that 17 Year 9s were brought to school in a car. So we can place that in the last column in that last entry. Now it's a matter of using the numbers inside our table and the subtotals to complete the rest of the table. We can see in the last column that we've got 14 and 17 Year 9s. Together they come to 31. So if we subtract that from the subtotal of 35, we know that 4 students in Year 9 must have caught the bus. Now we can look at the top row. We know that 24 students in total caught the bus. Now 16 Year 8s and 4 Year 9s comes to 20 students. So that means that there must be 24 minus 20, or 4 Year 7s that caught a bus. The next total we'll look at is the Year 7 total, which is 40. We know that we have 4 students in Year 7 who caught the bus, 25 who took a car. 4 plus 25 is 29, and we can take that away from 40 to get 11 who walked. Now what we can do is look at the walk row. The total number of students there is 30, and we'll subtract 11 and 14 from 30 to get 5. So in other words, 5 Year 8 students walked. And the last thing we'll look at, we could look at the Year 8 column, or we could look at the car total of 66. Either way, what we can do is do a subtraction. We'll look at the Year 8 column. 16 plus 5 is 21, and we'll subtract that from 45, and we get that 24 Year 8s took the car to school. So now our table is completed, and this is how we proceed through a two-way table when we're constructing it. We look at the information that's given to us, being very careful to make sure we place it in the right area, and then what we can do is subtract from the various totals to fill in the gaps.